Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Open to Work Beyond the Label, the podcast for talent in transition. Today's guest is someone who knows exactly what it takes to turn technical complexity into trusted partnerships and real business outcomes. With over 30 years of experience in customer success and pre-sales engineering, Glenn May has built a career on one powerful principle, helping customers succeed through clarity, strategy, and unwavering support. Glenn brings a blend of technical expertise and human connection to every client interaction. He's a data governance advocate, a customer success leader, and above all, a trusted partner in solving business problems. In today's episode, we're going to dive into Glenn's journey on how he builds long-lasting relationships in complex environments and what it really means to lead with transparency in tech. So, Glenn, thank you for being here today. Very nice to meet you and excited to get into your story.
Laura, thanks for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So, Glenn, why don't you give us an overview about who you are beyond the LinkedIn headline?
All right, so obviously the LinkedIn headline is going to show that I'm a seasoned tech professional. I've been doing this for over 30 years now. Hurts to say that sometimes, but it's been a great journey. But I have a passion for solving problems and complex issues, and I take that into my private life as well as my professional life. I'm a pilot. I'm an avid outdoorsman. I camp all the time. Um, I like to find issues. I like to fix them, and I like to enjoy life while I'm doing it. And that's a huge piece of this.
Absolutely. So, what first drew you to this field and how did your role evolve over time?
When I started in tech, we still use floppy disks and 300 baud modems. So it's it's been a couple of years. Um, what drew me to it was back then it was more like science fiction. It felt like an unrealistic world that we lived in that nobody knew anything about, and it was really cool to jump in and see what we could do with it. As time progressed, watching how this actually progressed and the amount of changes we made was incredible and captivating. And I couldn't let it go for the longest time. I wanted to know everything about every bit of technology I could find. It was a good time. It was, exciting and building relationships with customers. And, it was just a lot of fun. And I truly enjoy doing it to this day.
So, you started as customer success and then moved into solutions engineering. That's right?
Sort of. I started as customer service
Okay.
initially. So I started with a storage company in Massachusetts as a customer service person answering the phone. And went from there. I've been in engineering. I've been in solutions engineering roles. I've been in customer success roles. I've been in hybrid roles. I've kind of done a little bit of everything wherever I went, and it was really interesting to see the changes in not only the fields I was working in, but in myself as I went through them.
Yeah. And so I know that in each of those roles, there takes technical expertise as well as relationship building. And so, how do you balance those two very important things? Because I work with some people who are extremely technical, and at times you can kind of lose the normal person, I should say. And then I have people that are great relationship builders, but don't necessarily know the technology as well. So tell me how you balance those two aspects.
You have to know your audience when you're speaking to them. And this became very, very obvious to me in my sales architecture roles because you get into a room of people, be it virtual or physical, and you've got a mixed bag in there. So you've got C levels, you've got high tech people, and you've got to kind of get in the middle of where it is. So you can't go deep in the weeds with a mixed audience, and you can't go deep in the weeds, with somebody who's non-technical. So the way I handle it typically is I'll go through the conversations and I will address the customer's needs specifically and try not to get technical in my wording. If I do have to get techie or say something that's a little bit out of somebody's range, I stop and I'll reintroduce that in layman's terms or in plain English and bring them back to reality. The hard part about that is not speaking down to somebody or not making the perception that you are. So it just needs to be a general conversation, and a lot of that comes from that trust building you have with talking to customers.
Yeah. So there's going to be times where there's a critical situation, right? So let's say that a customer is escalated or there's a situation where maybe another engineer did a demonstration and it didn't go so well, right? There's always going to be those situations that are critical. How do you handle those situations? Can you share an example where you've helped turn around a challenged customer relationship?
I can share a couple of them. One in particular comes to mind is, and this was a customer we had at my previous company. They had been a customer for a while. They were kind of on the back burner. Nobody really talked to them a whole lot. They'd renewed a couple of times, but really no relationship with the customer. And my my salesman happened to be out there or talking to him on the phone and realized they had some problems. As a large engineering company out in Texas, he asked me to step in and see if I could talk to the admin folks and figure out where things went wrong or what was going right or whatever. Longer story short, by the time I got him on the phone, I realized that they had slowly been peeling us out of their environment because it wasn't working as they thought it was supposed to or as expected. I didn't understand why, so I got deeper with the admin, and we figured out over time that essentially it was a poor installation. When they first did this, nobody taught them what they were doing with the software or how to use it. So I started in at bare basics, and we eventually grew that same customer back out over 5,000 times the installation they had when we started is what they're at right now. They've bought company over company around the country in the past 3 years, and one of the reasons they're able to do that was because I taught them how to use the software properly. So the customer who was running away from us essentially became a huge advocate for us and is now one of our most outspoken customers, and we use them for references all the time. Um, it was a fantastic transition to watch them go from, yeah, we're unplugging, we're finding somebody else, to we can't get enough of you. So that was a lot of fun.
I can tell you that there's been so many times where clients come to us looking to change out their provider or vendor and say, it all started with implementation. Like, if the implementation is not done properly, that sets up a customer for just a poor experience throughout the life cycle. The other thing is even if the install is good, if the client doesn't know how to use it, training wasn't emphasized, that's also another issue. And so I can tell you, I've heard that story over and over. And so, as an organization, making sure that A, you've got great pre-sales engineers who set proper expectations and scope out the project and document it properly for the implementation team is critical. And then having an incredible professional services team who will then take what the pre-sales engineer provided and actually implement it accordingly and train accordingly for the duration of the customer's success. So that story sounds very familiar to me.
Yeah, it's not an uncommon one. It's essentially one of my previous roles as an implementation engineer at another company, and that's exactly what we did was going to make sure the implementations worked properly. We weren't the ones actually out in the field doing them, but if they had problems, typically, as you probably are aware, when a field engineer runs into an issue, he calls into support. Unfortunately, you don't always give your internal employees the same priority as you would a regular customer or a high value customer. So they'd sit out there waiting and waiting for things. So the company I worked for then developed an implementation support team that allowed us to jump in, fix the problem. We were their first line of defense, and we answered the phone as soon as they called because they were our only customer. So yeah, I fully understand that implementations are key to the customer understanding what they're doing, and then educating the customer as you install things, and they can go forward and use it properly.
That's brilliant. So, what other key takeaways could you share from your experience about just generally ensuring customer success from pre-sale to implementation? Because you've been on both sides of it. Like, what other key recommendations would you make for to make sure that you're going to have a happy customer after you sell them?
It's communications. No matter how you slice it, the biggest key is to communicate with the customer. Sometimes it's a painful communication. Sometimes you have to call and eat a little crow because something didn't go right. And do that. Be honest with the customer. Don't lie to them. Don't tap dance. Uh, all it does is set them back. If you're completely upfront, honest with them and straightforward, chances are you're going to have a happy customer and they're going to listen to you when you say something.
Yeah.
It's a big, big piece of it to me.
Yeah, totally. I mean, communication is key in any relationship, even your personal relationships, right? And so,
Correct.
that should definitely follow into the business world when it comes to dealing with customers. Communication is key. Even if you got to eat the frog every now and then, it's just important to
Exactly.
communicate properly and to take accountability too. That's a core value that I see as being extremely important in any
Yes,
relationship.
ma'am, absolutely is.
So, what does customer success truly mean to you beyond the renewal and the NPS score? Like, those are just the buzzwords that we keep hearing. So, talk to me about customer success.
Customer success, from my personal opinion, you can't gauge customer success off of renewals because 9 times out of 10, maybe not that high, but a lot of times the customer's renewing because A, they either don't have a better option, B, they don't have the time to research a better option, or C, it doesn't pain them as much. And as far as trying to go through your surveys and whatnot, face it, most of us get a survey. We're in the middle of doing 15 things, and what do we do? Click, 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 click. We're done. Out of it. Next. So the only people that are going to really stop and fill those out are the really upset ones, which is good to see where you're failing. Understood. Or the ones that are extremely happy, and the ones in the middle typically are just somebody who's filling out a survey. How I gauge customer success is the customer themselves. When you get on the phone with them, you communicate with them, you can tell where they are. I've been doing this a long time, as we started out saying, and you learn to read that from the customers. You learn to read their thought process and are they okay with what's going on? Are they happy with you? Are they irritated that you're asking them questions? These are all things you have to know how to read people with, and that's how I gauge my customers. It's how do they feel? If somebody were to ask that customer tomorrow, hey, what do you think about ABC company in their product? They're okay, is not the answer I want to hear. I want to hear the product is great, but the people working there are fantastic. Every time I've had a conversation or a question, they're right on top of it and they solve it for us.
Yeah, that's a
That's how I gauge it.
that's a great point. Customer experience, like customers having a great time working with your company is now the differentiator. There's so many, especially like us big tech companies, there's so many providers that do what we do. So how do we differentiate? And often it's the customer's experience and the customer's success because it's not just people treating them good too, it's also making sure that the technology is delivering the outcomes that were promised pre-sale.
Absolutely. And that goes back to sometimes the customer doesn't even realize what they want. They think they understand, they think they have a solution, but when they get down to the nitty gritty, what they have is, maybe a pipe dream. Maybe they're putting too much into one avenue to try to figure it out. So a lot of times it's our job as pre-sales and post-sales. I don't want to say change the customer's mind, but set the expectation properly. This is what you're looking to do here, and this is how we can accomplish that. The other stuff may or may not be something we need to work with, but this is your important pieces, and make sure that you're all on the same page with that.
You're making a great point. I will tell you something that really grinds my gears is RFPs. And the reason why is because you get this list of features, functionality, and most companies don't put their organizational mission, goals, values, the outcomes that they're trying to drive. And it's like, sure, any company can give you these features, functionality, but what does it matter? So what? What are you going to do with those? And how are you going to drive your business outcomes with those features and functions?
Absolutely. It's amazing to see that, and I've seen it in many of my positions. The last one in particular, I saw it very much towards the end of my time there. But they had moved from being a Windows only software package to including Linux as well, which I was brought on originally for that Linux portion. Um, and every customer calling wanted to do these mixed environments in their file systems. It doesn't work anywhere. It doesn't matter who you are. It's just there's very, very few in places where this will actually work properly. So yeah, there was an awful lot of conversation with customers of, okay, I understand you want to do that. Why? Let's find out.
The why is
And
so important.
usually you could absolutely, usually you can figure out where they're at and find a good solution for them that actually works. And that's the whole key to that.
Absolutely. You know, I've trained a lot of salespeople, and there's the salespeople that listen, oh, you want this, you want that. Okay, cool. It's the why piece because sometimes customers want to do things the way that they always did it, and actually, there's now a better way. But you have to
Hmm.
understand the why so that you can give them another option, still solving for their why, but not necessarily doing it the way they always did it. Because if you try and do it that way, you might not be able to actually support their needs because things don't work the way they used to, especially in technology. You know what I'm saying?
Things change daily, if not hourly.
Literally. And now add AI on top of it. The number of companies who are like, we want to use AI
Hmm.
for,
Great.
like
And let's narrow that one down. What part of AI do you want to use? Because we've been using it for a lot of years,
yeah,
everywhere, but
exactly.
people don't realize what it truly means. They're looking for that magic bullet again, and the buzzword. Just like when cloud became a big thing, we have to go to the cloud. Great, the cloud's fantastic. Why?
Yeah. And what are you
So
trying
that's
to move to the cloud? There's so many things you can move to the cloud. It's the same thing with AI. What do you need the AI for? You know?
right.
So
You have to understand where they're coming from.
seriously. So, okay, so now what happens a lot of the time is you get in a room and now it's buyer by committee. So you've got all of these different types of stakeholders in one room. So how do you approach solving complex technical problems while keeping the people that are non-technical in the room engaged?
Hopefully, you're not in a room of non-technical people trying to solve big technical problems. It does happen. And it's really difficult because you start diving through the weeds quickly with all the other technical people in the room. And again, it goes back to being very cautious of who you have there, who your audience is, and stopping frequently to, I don't want to use the word explain because it's degrading to a certain point, but reiterating the conversation in more of an English or a layman's term that people do understand. And that's the one that I've kind of taken to heart over the years because I've been in enough situations where I have C-level and I have, the high techies in the room. And yes, they all want to solve the same problem. And the technical people are having a conversation about it. And all of a sudden, C-level steps in going, what are you talking about? I don't understand. I don't like to wait till they get to the point of what are you talking about? I don't understand. I try to keep them engaged, throughout. And I will stop periodically and just have a conversation with them about that particular thing and say, yeah, this is how it's affecting you. This is what we're talking about. So they fully understand. And again, it's a tough dance because you don't want to insult them. You're not insulting their intelligence. It's just not their world. I could walk up to a doctor and I don't understand how to do heart surgery. You know, you can talk down to me all you want with that one. I have no idea, so it's okay. I know what the outcomes are, but I don't know how to get there.
Yeah. Yeah, every field has their own technical jargon, and ultimately we've got to break it down for our clients, especially the C-suite who is ultimately making the decision whether or not to continue working with your company. So,
Yeah, that's a huge one.
so I wanted to ask you a question about data security and governance. And when we're in these rooms now talking about technical solutions, data security is critical. Like that is coming up in
Absolutely.
every single evaluation, information security, making sure that they're doing their security review before procuring a new product. This is something that you're very passionate about. Why is this such a critical focus in your eyes?
Because for a lot of years, security was something that was passive. People didn't understand that they had to keep things tight. They would just let whatever it was, it was. I mean, I don't know how many times I've shown up at customer sites to work on things over the years, be it my implementation careers or anything else. And I go to a router, I go to a machine, and we're talking default passwords. Nothing's been changed. Well, nobody knows how to get in here. It doesn't matter. It does matter. People get in everywhere. I see it continuously in home environments and people with their phones and everywhere else. Nobody considers the ramifications of not paying attention to what they're touching or what they're doing. And to me, that is the biggest problem we've got currently, and that goes right down to your governance. I mean, you've got things like HIPAA out there that you have to make sure is secure. But you go to a doctor's office and the nurse comes in to check you in. and gets up and walks out of the room and leaves the computer logged in. Not good. It's things like that, that really stand out as security problems. I have worked over the years with many healthcare agencies, insurance agencies, financial agencies, and trying to get that mentality through. Between security, disaster recovery, these are things that for years and years and years are taken not seriously enough. So it's good to see it's coming to light. Unfortunately, it's coming to light with people having to spend trillions of dollars to get their data back from some bad apple somewhere.
Everyday people don't realize how important their data security is. So, yes, from a
Hmm.
company perspective, they're waking up, but even the everyday person is not realizing, like I've seen, there was just another huge hack, right? Like first we had our social security numbers hacked. Now we have our Apple and Google and all of these passwords being leaked. And what's the impact to us? And how many people actually went and changed their passwords? I can say that is something that I need to do. I've locked all of my I've locked all of my credit bureaus. That's the first thing I did. But it's so wild to think about how many of us are not taking our own data security to like heart and making sure that we're locking that down. And then it's not until you get a hack or you get your information stolen that you're like, "Oh, why me?" And it's like, "Well, you didn't go and change all your passwords when your data was leaked."
Right, you didn't fix that. That was on you. It was given to you.
Yeah. So I agree. Data security is something I'm also very passionate about, not just from the company level, but from the individual level. And it's just not fair to us. I mean, think about 23andMe. I don't know what's happening there, but I can tell you I never sent my DNA there. And then they
Nope.
sold the company. Who knows where all your DNA is, right?
Well, now they're out of business. So, where does that go? So I'll little family history in that one. All of my siblings, I'm one of six. All of my siblings had gone and done a 23andMe. And one of my brothers he's constantly picking things out of the internet, saying, "Hey, this person can be related. This person can be related. You should have done this so we could try it." I'm like,
No
no,
thanks.
I have enough of my personal information and DNA out there as it is. I don't need more.
Yeah.
You know, it's just not. I'm not giving it to a company that I can't vet. I have no idea who they are, what they are.
Yeah,
No, thank
I
you.
agree. And there's people out there that are like, I don't mind sending my DNA. Like, what ultimately, what are they gonna do? I'm not a murderer. I'm not a killer. I'm not a, thief, whatever. Like, no one's gonna catch me doing anything wrong. Okay, but in the future, will they take your DNA and clone you? Who knows,
Hmm,
right?
they already can. It's absolutely possible.
Like, I don't
It's
need
been done
another Laura running around
several
out there.
times.
No one needs that.
the world the world doesn't need two of me, that's for certain.
Exactly. So, all right. Well, this is great. And so, what I will say is, this is our first time meeting, and I am just loving this conversation. I wasn't sure if you were going to be super technical, and you are so down to earth. So, can you share any advice to other people who are in technical roles and struggling with just relating to customers and working with customers from a customer facing communication perspective?
Absolutely. And the hardest one or the easiest one to say here is stop talking and listen. And that's the thing that most people don't want to do. And I got to admit, I'm very guilty of doing it myself, and I have to consciously stop because I'll get into a meeting and somebody starts, telling me their problem, and I've seen the same problem 100 times, and I assume I know the answer. And that's the worst thing you can do. So stop, listen, let them explain, ask all the questions you need to make absolutely certain everybody's on the same page, and then start offering solutions to there. Otherwise, you're really just digging yourself into a hole that you don't want to climb out of. It's challenging to do, and I completely understand it. And that's the biggest thing I have to tell people. Just listen to your customers, listen to the people you're working with, and make sure that you understand where they're coming from. Make sure they understand where you're coming from. Just be honest all the way around the board.
Yeah, two ears and one mouth, right? It's so important. It's almost like building something. You have directions, you have all these pieces in front of you, and you only read section D, and now you're going to build this whole thing. What? Like, you need to understand A, B, C, D, E, F, G before building it. And so many salespeople out there, as an example, because I'm in sales, are only hearing D and trying to build a solution. It's like you got to know the whole picture before you build the solution. And it's not a solution unless the customer has the need and says, this solves my need.
That's the hardest part of sales, and which is one of the reasons why I never put myself in a true sales role. Although I do believe that pre-sales engineering is absolutely a sales role. I used to tell my salesmen all the time, you sell the company, let me sell the product.
Love it.
And that way I'm selling what they need, not the fluff. So no, absolutely is critical that they understand what they're not to sell them as well. And us is, same thing. How many times have you had futures put on your plate of this is what the product's going to do in a year, and people start telling customers about it? You can't. You have to wait till they're tangible. Otherwise, you're selling them something that doesn't exist.
And I'll tell you, a lot of customers are no longer buying on future because they've been burned. How many times have they met with a company who's like, oh, yeah, that's on our roadmap? And then ultimately, it never actually comes to fruition. Customers have been burned by
Hmm.
that now. And so a lot of them don't want to hear about your futures. They want to hear about your now.
Right, absolutely, and that is hugely key when it comes to talking to them. I have in the past told customers that, look, this is what's on our roadmap, but I'm not promising you anything. We're looking at it. Could it happen? It absolutely could happen. But until I have an absolute date and I've seen a prototype, no.
Yeah. Don't buy on my future. I'll share my future because I think it's important. There are times where companies are looking at working with a vendor who potentially might not exist in the future because they're for sale or they're with private equity or whatever the case may be, right? So I do think like, okay, what's your future look like is important, but don't buy on my future because at the end of the day, future is always unknown.
Oh yeah, no, it's not guaranteed at all.
So I
Perfect.
want to talk a little bit more about you. Looking back on your career, Glenn, it sounds like you've had so many different experiences. What's one moment you're especially proud of from your career?
Oh, that's a rough question because the one that I'm most proud of is also one that hurt the most in the process of it happening. I was on site at a customer's location. I was rearranging data for them so they can consolidate some big DASDs, data storage devices, send some out for data disaster recovery areas and some locally and that sort of thing. And I was young. I was in my early 20s, a little cocky, I'll be honest. Decided, I was going through machines. I'm reading the last four digits of all the serial numbers, and that's the machine I have to work on. So I'd start its process, do its thing, wipe it out, yada, yada, yada. And it was going fine. It was a little past midday, so it was probably 2 or 3 in the afternoon. I read my last four of the serial number. I look up, I see the box. All right, that's the next one I have to clear out. So I just immediately start cleaning out the box and resetting it back to factory with no data on it. It's been chugging for about 10 minutes or so, and I look over at another machine trying to figure out what I can do next, and I see the exact same four digits of that serial number on a machine across the data center aisle. Heart stopped. I looked up again, pulled up the sheet and started reading the rest of the serial number and realized, yes, I just did the wrong box. I just erased customer data in a live environment in a large financial firm during the workday. So, after I got done the heart palpitations, I walked into the manager's office and I said, well, there's two ways this is going to go. You're going to throw me out of here or you're going to let me fix this. And this is what I did. This is what I affected. My stupidity, I didn't read, and I'm sorry. You know, Granted, he wasn't happy with me. He had a couple of high volume comments, back, and that's fine. I accept that. I made a bad mistake. However, the reason I'm proud of it is because I stood there and took that beating, if you will, and then I stood there all night long, putting the entire machine back together off backups, and made sure by morning everything was back to the way it was before I screwed it up. So yeah, that one, it means a lot to me because even as a young person, I did the right thing. I could have just went, I don't know what happened. It just did that, and I didn't. So that's where I'm proud of myself for doing that, and I'm proud that I got him back up and running as fast as I could. With minimal impact. There was obviously impact, but it wasn't as bad as it could.
Wow.
That was a huge mistake that I just had to own.
I had a less high stakes mistake that I made once, and it showed me the difference between myself and others. And I'm more like you than others. So I was in fashion, and I will tell you, it was an internship, and I will never go back into fashion. I I was in fashion for a very short while, and I think of this moment. It was me and another person, and we were putting the samples on a rack with hangers. There's hangers that go like this way, or th yeah, they go this way, but we were putting them this way. So we were putting the clothing on on the rack wrong. Okay, way less high stakes. The
Fair
manager
enough.
came in and was like, "Those hangers are all backwards." And the other person with me was doing it the same way. And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, I had no idea and I took accountability for it. That person stayed quiet, did not take any accountability, acted like they were doing it the right way the whole time. And at the end of it, actually, that person ended up continuing to work with that brand. And I just don't think they liked me very much, to be honest. But people told me in fashion that it's just a different type of person. Like, you really do have to be a little cutthroat in order to be successful, and you do have to kind of step on people along the way. Anybody listening that's in fashion, I'm sorry if it's not like that, but that's what I was told. And in that moment, I felt that way. I was like, okay, so we're not taking accountability in this industry. I don't want to be in this industry. So I will tell you, I commend you on what you did, because in my very low stakes situation, I'm very proud of myself for holding my value of accountability. And at the end of the day, if that environment didn't accept my accountability, then I don't belong in that environment. And it sounds like it all worked out very well for you. And I could only imagine the heart palpitations you're having, because I would have probably, my head would have exploded in that moment. But the taking accountability and then fixing the issue is what sets you apart from most other people that would have had that situation.
It's like I said, that was something that was. I mean, I had to go back and call my boss and tell him what I had done as well, and that was, equally as frightening as I'm thinking I'm going to get fired for this. And no, the reason why it was okay, if you will, wasn't okay, but nothing terrible happened to me in the process is because I did it right. I did own the problem. I did own my mistake, and I fixed it. We're humans. We make mistakes. It happens. There's no shame in that. I mean, try to make the same mistake once, not twice, and believe me, that's never been repeated, and never will again. But learn from them and move forward, and that makes us better people as we grow.
Yeah, definitely. So, what are some other pieces of advice that you wish that you had earlier in your careers?
Some of my early career was spent in a group that was tap dancey, if you will. I don't know the right word for to say that, but instead of telling the customer what the truth is, they would dance around it and give them a company whatever. Um, and I was afraid to sit back and say, hey, that's wrong. Don't do that. We have to tell the customers what's going on. So for the first couple of years of that, I would follow that suit and okay, this is the story we're going to spin. Let's do that. I wish I was told early on that it's okay to be truthful. It's okay to tell the customers what's happening. And it's okay to look at the people you work with and say, no, this isn't how we're going to play this. This is the right way. Let's do it the right way so everybody comes out happy in the end. Uh, and that's a huge lesson that I don't think enough people learn. And it goes to, again, being responsible for your actions. And that's something that we all have to make sure we do.
Salespeople get a bad rep for not setting proper expectations with customers or not telling them the whole truth. And I will tell you that that is something that was very important as a sales leader to me, to train my people to always tell the truth and to always be extremely honest about what we can and cannot do, because ultimately it's just going to end up badly later. So why let it be bad later when we can just get ahead of it? And who knows? Maybe the customer is okay with our product not doing that specific capability. And if they need it, then let's not waste our time selling a deal and then having an issue later. So I couldn't agree with you more because I had that experience in my career early on where we were salespeople just getting people to sign sales orders. And ultimately, that is something that I never, ever will allow myself to be or my people to be. It will always be transparent, understand the customer's needs in depth so that you don't have a problem later.
And it goes right back to the same question we had earlier. Why? Figure out what they need and why they need it to make sure that you're giving the right thing. Make sure everybody's on that same page. I've had many salespeople in my career oversell something, and one of my previous roles in support, I was at a large storage company in Massachusetts, and I've had salespeople there sell the product to do things it wasn't supposed to do. I wasn't in sales. I wasn't an SA. I wasn't an SE. I wasn't doing any of that. However, because I have an ability to talk to people at a less technical level, I'd be dragged into certain deals just to have a conversation with a customer for nothing else. So I'd been involved in some of these, and what broke my heart or what killed me is I'd be standing there listening to a salesperson sell a product to do something it doesn't do. And because I'm the one in support, you know who's going to catch this on the other end is going to be me. So I've stuck my foot in my mouth more than once and stopped a conversation in the middle of a customer. Try to do it diplomatically and not call the salesperson out completely the way you'd like to at that stage. But let them know. I think maybe you're mistaken. This is more what you're trying to say. This is more what it can do. So yeah, I'm very passionate about making sure that it goes the right way when it comes to that.
Agreed. So, if listeners take one message away from this conversation, what do you hope that is?
And it goes back to being honest. Don't try to BS the customers. Don't try to give them information that's inaccurate just to save face for yourself. Um, again, back to an earlier statement: listen, don't talk, and and be there for them. You're their advocate. You're their champion to make sure they have what they need at your company. Be that person. Be the person they trust. Once you've developed a good, trusting relationship with that customer, you're going to go much further, much faster, and everybody's going to come out of the end of that feeling so much better.
Thank you, Glenn, and thank you for all of your insights. This was a very enjoyable conversation, especially because we're in similar industries where we're helping customers to have great outcomes, whether it be with technology or just with our company in general. And so I appreciate this conversation very much. Glenn, being open to work, what type of roles are you looking for, and how can somebody help you if they're listening and have an opportunity?
I'm looking for a customer success role. I'm looking for sales engineering roles. I'm looking for anything, to be honest with you, where I can be proactive in making sure that our customers get exactly what they need and they have a great experience with the company and the product. I hate to stick a title on anything because you've been in the industry long enough to know titles change next week. So you can call it whatever you want: customer service, customer success, customer management, account manager, anything along those lines to me is the same basic role. And I want to be there to help customers. So that's what I'm looking for. I obviously would prefer a remote role because I do have a unique situation. I live remotely continuously and I travel frequently on my own, which has given me some pretty amazing opportunities because I drive from point A to point B when I move locations. And I've had customers along the way that I've pulled in and spent a day or so in the area and gone and bought them lunch and sat down and had conversations with them, people I'd never met in person before. So it's great to be able to do that. And I just think it makes a much more personal feeling for the customers that way. So I truly do enjoy being able to do that and would like to continue to.
Incredible. And how can people reach out to you?
Reach out to me on LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to do so, or email me at Glenn E. May, GLENN, at Glenn E. May, GLENNEMAY.com. You can reach me either way, and I'll be certain to respond.
Great. Well, thank you, Glenn, again for your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I'm looking forward to seeing where you land because I know that your skill set is going to be an incredible asset at your next company.
Thank you very much, Laura. I very much appreciate this time. It was great spending time with you, and hopefully I'll talk to you again in the future.
Absolutely.